Namaste everyone, you see behind me Dome Rock. I'm going to give you a little panorama of what I'm looking at. I climbed this false summit. It's not really a false summit, it's just the hill right before Dome Rock. I don't want to climb Dome Rock. I mean, I do, but en route to coming up here, I stepped on a lot of really starving plants, really working hard to survive out here, and I know that some of them were damaged, and so I don't want to. I just don't want to hurt the plants and call me a wimpy, but that's, you know, they got a life too, so there's no need. I got a thrill climbing up this rock, and I've climbed up bigger mountains than that anyway. So what I want to talk to you today, or just to mention, is this idea that your perceptions are filtered. Hold on, this is a little slanty, I don't like that. Right there, that's better. Your data, the data that comes in, is filtered by your emotions. You see and perceive different things when you're angry than when you're sad, than when you're gleeful, than when you're content, and when you're tired, which might not be an emotion. You could be mentally tired, I'd consider that emotion, or you could be physically tired. That's more of, you know, just a physical condition. And I think of it as a force field. I just pretend. I imagine that my emotions, it represents in word magic energy and motion, and so it's not so dissimilar. I was kind of a nerd growing up, and I would watch like Star Trek, and they had like the force field that would keep people in the brig, in the, you know, in the prison cell, and it was, or the force field to the ship or whatever. That's kind of like an emotion, and certain weaponry in that analogy. I'm not saying that we're trying to attack each other, but certain technology, let's say, certain kinds of energy could pierce the force field. For example, they could selectively take an arm through the force field, as long as the force field was, let's say, it's sci-fi, I get it, but was coded so that the frequency of your arm could go through it. Okay, so you already know that you're filtering perceptions based on what state you're in, what emotional condition you're in. So are other people. They are filtering your communication based on their emotions. So it's a common saying in the pickup community: change her mood, don't change her mind. A lot of people will logic load and give compelling reasons why you should feel this way about something. The thing is that logic and emotions are mutually exclusive. They do not coexist. And so when you're being emotional, you're not being rational, and vice versa. And so it's about changing someone's mood. Now that could also be said, changing their frequency. The emotion, just like that force field, has a certain frequency. If it was more red, you could say it's a longer wavelength. If it's more blue, it's shorter wavelength. And I'm not saying that emotions have a definite color, at least not in the visible spectrum. They're definitely a frequency, because when you've been enraged, you've been vibrating. I guarantee it. When you're super content, it's like really a mellow, low amplitude, maybe long wavelength kind of frequency. And so it's useful for your mind to conceive of emotions as a frequency. And given that they're a frequency, it's kind of like when you're in, if you're in a rainforest and there's lots of different insects late at night, or anywhere where there's lots of insects. They don't actually hear each other. It's like a big wall of noise that we humans hear, because we have a big bandwidth that we can receive. But insects don't. They only hear their particular species. They're deaf to everything else. And this also comes into play. I don't know if I talked about I think in the Silent Flute I talked about the camp counselor effect, where we tend to start to tune out if we hear a frequency over and over and over. So that's why it's the job of the instructor to change their pitch, add pauses, prolong words, do all of these communication techniques that keep your attention gripped. And otherwise you'll start to tune me out. And then other instructors, their frequency will penetrate your mind, and then all of a sudden you'll think, oh, they got the answers, when really your instructor was probably giving you the answers all along. That's the camp counselor effect. And so it's your job as a communicator. Now, you can think of, I don't want to think of communication as a job. I want it to be more spontaneous and free. And hold on, I want more of the mountain. Hold on. Yeah, I want more of the mountain in the picture. Fine. Then that's being the effect. You can do that, and you can go with the flow. And if you do that, I would recommend you do it 100%. Never a single tenth of a half of a percent. Do you want to take control of communication? You go 100% surrender, and magic will happen there too. That's a very left-hand path, or right-hand path, sorry. But for the rest of us, if you're wishy-washy, if you're cloudy, if it's vague, sometimes I take control, sometimes I don't. Listen, the only way to really attain peace of mind, other than absolute surrender, which most of us are not capable of. If I was capable of it, I just don't want to do it. I like the sense of having the ability to steer where am I going in life, steer where my communication is going, steer what kind of ideas I feed my mind with, and lead myself to conclusions that I want. That doesn't mean I already had the conclusions, but I lead myself there through communication and so on. And so when you take this perspective of taking charge of all your communication lines, to mom and dad, to boyfriend, girlfriend, to siblings, to friends, to employers, to teachers and students, all your communication threads, to spiritual entities, to nature, how you communicate. You take charge of the communication line. You make it smooth. You make it positive. You make it genuine. You make it a connection, a two-way street. You facilitate that. You're the catalyst for good communication. And one of the principles is you got to know that people's moods and their emotions are filtering your communication. If what you're saying is not getting through, and you should, at this point, or if not, then definitely get on the silent flute and ask questions, and I'll teach you how. Be able to pick up several cues, physical and tonal and verbal, from people. Sorry, I got something in my nose. You should be able to pick up cues if they're getting it or not. And ideally, if you have a good communication thread with them, that they'll acknowledge that they're getting it. So acknowledgement's very key in all of this. And it could be simply, yeah, I got it. That's an acknowledgement. And so when you pick up that they're not getting it, then start to not look at how can I logify this, unless they're like in it. If they're just, but usually the acknowledgement will go like this: I'm not understanding. Can you say it a different way? Then they're with you, and it's not a shield of emotion. But if they're agreeing with you, but you can tell from their body that it just didn't hit because maybe you said something profound, and it's like they're just acting like you said something, arbitrary. Then start to look at maybe their mood is shielding the communication. Your words are a frequency also, so the frequency of your words are not penetrating the frequency of their emotional shield. And this happens sometimes if let's say you were in that wall of insect noise and you tried to talk to somebody, your voice might get drowned out by that. Not necessarily because it's a bigger amplitude, meaning volume, but because the chaos of all of those frequencies distorts your frequency to a point where it's like garbled. Okay, so you need to, as a good communicator, if you want your communication to get through their emotional shield, get through to their mind, then start to think about, one, what can I do to change this person's mood? It might be, I'll link the videos below of prior videos I talked about connecting. So it's about taking educated guesses on maybe what are they wanting or what are they needing that they're not getting right now. They're distracted by some emotion that's in the background of their mind, and that's all coming from an unmet want or need. So you can start to ascertain that. Increasing your emotional vocabulary will help with connecting with the individual. In that connection is rapport, and in rapport, your ideas are more well received. And other than that, it can be also, so the technique one was change their mood, change their emotion. And there's lots of examples of this. I was doing acrobatics with my girlfriend, and we're flirting with the edge of our capabilities together. So inevitably frustrations come up and wants. I want to do this, but we're both yogis mostly, and so health, wellness, well-being, peace of mind, heart rate, all of these, our breath, these are the really important things for us. The acrobatics is like a fun way to test our abilities in these other areas of our heart rate, our breath, our posture, and all these things. And at some point there was a complication of communication. It wasn't getting through, and we could have pushed through it, and in the past I had pushed through that, not necessarily with her, but with other acro partners. And it just creates stress and tension. And yeah, you might get the skill, whatever it is, doing some crazy acrobatic skill, but that's not the point, because I'm not trying to be the Chinese national acrobatics, star. I'm trying to explore my body, my consciousness with another person in a very playful way. And so it's not about logifying it and being like, well, if your foot is here and my hand is here and we do it this way. It's about change the mood. Okay, let's have a seat and take a break. How are you feeling? What are you feeling about this? And let's connect. And as soon as we connect, then all of a sudden the skill happens, because it was the mood that was filtering the communication. Okay, so the first thing is you change the mood. The second thing is you just change your voice. You change your communication. You change the frequency of your communication, and then you might be able to access them. For example, if two people are angry and they're yelling at each other, their force fields are inhibiting each other's communication from getting through. So you change your frequency. You go into super calm, serene, or empathetic. I wouldn't recommend any kind of victim like sympathy or pretending to be weak or something so that they stop. That would work, and I mean, that's a survival strategy. Playing possum works, and if 10 guys were coming at me, I might play possum, like, whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. But if it's a communication that's not like life-threatening like that, you might just consider changing your frequency, and that might get through to them. And I do have examples of this, but this video is already long enough. So changing your voice, changing your communication is as simple as like what Shawn Michael taught me: pitch, pause, passion, prolongation, and there were 2 other P's I haven't written down somewhere. And so you can start to think of, if I'm changing my pitch, or if I want to go really low, if I change my pace, that was another one, so I can talk slower. And this might affect you more in a different way. And if you had a different frequency of attitude, for example, if you were really amped, that would bore the shit out of you. But if you were really tired, it might get through to you. Pause, prolongation, I mean, you can contact me if you want more on linguistics training and how to talk. Not that I'm a professional talker, but I am, because my occupation is to communicate certain ideas via my voice and my body. And so that's all for this one. I hope you found this video helpful. Definitely comment below if you had any questions, or if this did something for you. Subscribe if you haven't already. And so many things are happening. I got an event coming up with Brian Casella, who is a top real estate coach. So we're going to talk about selling, mindset training, and where does yoga fit into being an entrepreneur. And I'm very excited about that. More to come on that. That'll be at the end of October, I believe October 29th, but stay tuned for that. And I'll see you in the next one. Namaste.